going on?
Woo.
Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. November 28th, 3:30 p.m., right before Monday Night Football. Lucas and Cameron hanging out, fresh off of Thanksgiving for Cameron. We haven't heard how his Thanksgiving was yet.
Oh,
You weren't in Florida. Your new called home. You were in the city of bright lights.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, we walked into Times Square that first time at like 9:00 at night, and you realize why it's a city that never sleeps. It felt like it was daytime at 9:30 at night. It was crazy. Like, got the billboards everywhere. It was a lot of fun. Got to see my brother march in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
That'd be pretty sweet.
That was pretty sweet. But kind of feel glad I went. Super awesome. I don't need to go back again for a while. So
you got his one lifetime experience in.
Not fully my scene, but it was interesting.
FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subbed and have notifications turned on because we're pumping out content for you all every single day. Same with the podcast as well on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Community Full League winners down on our chalkboard. 1,600 strong, unsolicited fantasy advice on any fantasy football topic, plus our weekly rankings as well. I should probably throw that out there. If you're on our weekly rankings, go join our chalkboard down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Week 12, wrapping it out here tonight. Will be done by the time the viewers get this episode. We'll recap all of Sunday's action. Give you some waiver ads for this week as well. But before we do that, let's recap some news and notes from the weekend brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. It's where we host all of our fantasy football leagues right now. I just hopped in another dynasty league. I got to tell you about this afterwards.
Oh, really?
After the podcast. Ooh. This is a story. I gotta tell it afterwards. But that's over on Sleeper. We play all of our leagues over there. If you want to join the number one fantasy football platform in the world, you can check out the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Love our friends over at Sleeper. Darnell Mooney left yesterday's game with an ankle injury. He is likely to have surgery on that, meaning he will miss extended time. It has not been declared season ending, but if you're having injury on your ankle this late in the season, you got to assume at this point he's not going to make it back this year.
No, and they have no real reason to rush him back. So they're fighting for the first overall pick. Secretly they might want him to stay out.
Not that having Darnell Mooney on the field would have made a massive difference for them winning games. Justin Fields misses his first option, but if it's not Mooney, F it. Fields is scrambling most of the time anyways. He did not play in yesterday's game. It was Trevor Siemian, but I digress. Once Justin Fields is back, he will be without his top option, Darnell Mooney, for the foreseeable future for sure.
Mm-hmm.
J.K. Dobbins, he is returning from the IR. He now has 21 days to be elevated to the active roster. I don't like this Baltimore backfield at all. There's too many mouths to feed. We even saw that yesterday with Gus Edwards coming back. He saw the bulk of the carries, only 9 fantasy points on the day.
Yeah. Like you said, Ravens backfield is already tough to figure out. Now J.K. Dobbins comes back. He hasn't been super healthy all year, so it's not like he's going to come back and take it over. You got to pretty much just stay away from this backfield for the rest of the season.
I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Dobbins if he's dropped in your league, or if you can trade for him like super cheap right now. I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him with the schedule they have coming up.
Yeah.
That being said,
that's true.
He's not a guy I'm heavily investing in for sure. I'm still staying away. Yeah.
Yep. Should have clarified. Not like you said, if he's on waivers, you got to pick him up, but you shouldn't be starting him right
No, by no means. I'm definitely staying away from the starting lineup talk.
Yes.
Joe Mixon, this is nerve-wracking. He's still in concussion protocol.
Yeah.
Oof. This is not good.
No. Not at all.
I mean, good for Samaje Perine if you picked him up, but this is just adds more importance on. And we even saw from Samaje on Sunday, 19 fantasy points. This is why you roster your handcuffs this late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
If you have Derrick Henry, Dontrell Hilliard, if you have Jonathan Taylor, Deion Jackson, if you have Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison, if you have Travis Etienne, Darrell Henderson, Jermichael Hasty. Speaking of Etienne, he was cleared to play after being taken out of the game yesterday, but he was held out. Smart move by the Jaguars.
Especially since they won.
Especially since they won. Yeah, smart move by the Jags to keep him out. No need to risk re-injury on that foot, though he was cleared to play. But that is something to keep an eye on during the week. If they limit him during practice, that's some necessary context you have to take into consideration there. They could just be giving him a couple of days off here to make sure that foot is 100%, because he has been really good when on the football field. But they got to make sure he stays healthy first. Deshaun Watson, cleared to play. He is now returning from suspension this week. In week 13, we get the season debut of Deshaun Watson next week.
In Houston.
You can't make this stuff up.
I've talking with my sister, who's a Browns fan. According to all 7 Browns fans in Davenport, Iowa, they all want Jacoby Brissett to remain the starter. But it sounds like Deshaun Watson will be starting.
Well, there's a reason why they live in Iowa and are Browns fans and not in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, look, Jacoby has held his own. That's no disrespect to Jacoby.
No,
he's played well. He's played, I think, for what the Browns expected out of him this year, probably exceptional. Again, with context there, but I mean, to pay the man the money you're paying him and not start him, he is your starting quarterback, whether you want him to be or not. Yeah. Sam Darnold, speaking of starting quarterbacks, he's going to remain the starter after the bye week. I mean, Darnold, can I say he didn't look half bad?
Hey, you look better than the other 2 options, that's for sure.
He did. I wasn't sure how DJ Moore would fare. We saw Sam Darnold and DJ Moore click at the beginning of last year, right? They were both absolutely crushing it, both top 5 options at their positions. But 4 or 5 weeks in, that fell off very, very quickly. So I don't want to. I am certainly not knighting Sam Darnold anytime soon. But like you said, he looked better than Baker Mayfield. And PJ Walker, I think, is up for debate because PJ Walker was much more of a game manager. But I think that's what they need Darnold just to be at this point, is just make the simple throws, make the good throw. That's it. That's all I need him to do.
Yeah, the interesting thing was it was against a good Broncos defense that they moved the ball on. So it wasn't like it was, he wasn't playing the Bears like Mike White was. So you feel like you can't have some confidence. That wasn't a knock on Mike White.
No. Mike White played out of his mind yesterday, though.
Exactly. But, you feel like you have some confidence. But like you said, we saw this from Darnold where we started getting excited. People were buying into Sam Darnold. And then all of a sudden, legs fell off. So it's just something to keep in mind moving forward. But, I would feel a lot more confident in DJ Moore moving forward.
Allen Robinson has been declared out the rest of the season. This man cannot catch a break.
No.
I feel for Allen Robinson because he got this offensive line can't give Stafford enough time to find Allen Robinson downfield. Now he suffers an injury. He loses Matt Stafford before that. Now he suffers a season-ending injury on the $50 million he's making over the next 3 years. Like, I feel for the man.
Yeah.
Tough for Allen Robinson. I'll always love him, but that's tough if you're
you might be the only one left.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I can have respect for the guy outside of fantasy football, right? The man was balling in Chicago before last year.
He had a couple good years.
Aaron Rodgers, excuse me. read the same bullet point again nearly. Aaron Rodgers, he's going to have an MRI on his ribs. The initial report was an oblique that he came out of yesterday's game with, but now the report is his ribs is what's bothering him. Jordan Love came in relief, actually looked pretty good last night. Nearly matched Aaron Rodgers' fantasy points in a mere quarter and a half, I believe it was. Something to keep an eye on throughout the week. Not that you were starting Aaron Rodgers most weeks. He was starting to turn it around, though. He was starting to make me look real dumb a few weeks ago for saying you could probably cut Aaron Rodgers. But now, if Jordan Love is a starter, everybody in Green Bay outside of Aaron Jones, I'm skeptical of. Even though, like, Christian Watson did catch, a 60-yard bomb from Jordan Love last night for a touchdown. There's some confidence there, but I mean, the Eagles, like, let's not kid ourselves. The Eagles were up in this game. The Packers were playing catch up.
Yeah, that's how the game went. Rodgers did say he's going to play till the Packers are mathematically out. But he's got maybe 1 or 2 more games left. That means
I'll say if they lose. Who do they get next week again?
Oh God, Let's see. Next week they have the Bears, but then they go.
Oh.
I mean, Rams actually isn't going to be that great of a game, but then they got Dolphins in Miami, and then they have Minnesota.
So yeah, I mean, mathematically they're not out, but
No,
I would not bet on the Packers making the playoffs. Elijah
nope.
Mitchell may have an MCL sprain, another knee issue for him this year.
Can't catch a
Dude,
break.
the man can just not stay healthy. Which, if you're a Christian McCaffrey manager, is almost like a sigh of relief of like, "Whew, all right, my stud running back is going to go back to getting
I know.
25 touches a game," which is phenomenal. Michael Carter, he left yesterday's game. We will talk about. Will we talk about his backup? No, we will
We
not. He
will.
did not crack. Well, we will later in the
Oh,
episode. You're
yep.
right. Yes, yes, yes. I was thinking he had a better week than I was giving him credit for. Zonovan Knight, my goodness.
Yeah.
He came in as relief for Michael Carter. James Robinson, healthy scratch yesterday.
Crazy.
But Michael Carter, day to day, they are unsure of the severity of his ankle sprain. He may be back next week, but that is definitely one to keep an eye on throughout the week.
For sure.
News and notes brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to play with over 4 million users over on Sleeper, click on the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Booms and busts of the week. Let's dive into it. We have got 48 minutes here to fly through all of our booms and busts of the week. Let's start with running backs per usual. And this man, Josh Jacobs. Thank you for making me eat my words, for making us eat our words. We were not believers. All the reports this offseason. Josh McDaniels coming in. Could be great for Josh Jacobs, but again, wasn't going to get the receiving work. They're running one hell of a rushing attack in Vegas right now. 33 rushing attempts for Jacobs, 229 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, added 6 receptions on 7 targets for 74 yards, 48 fantasy points on the week. I mean, you just cannot top what Josh Jacobs is doing this year. From a value perspective in the draft, like we talk about all these guys who are like sneaky late round picks, right? Or it's like, oh, Christian Kirk, he's a great one that we will victory lap forever. Ramondre Stevenson, I will victory lap him forever. But Josh Jacobs, like, I don't care that he went as a running back 20. You did not draft this out of the running back 20. You had no idea this was going to be Josh Jacobs this year.
No, he's the RB2 on the season now. He is averaging 2.2 points more than the RB3, which is Derrick Henry, who's at 19.8 fantasy points a game.
It's insane.
I mean, even this performance, like you said, you have 48.3 fantasy points. Even if you take away the biggest 85-yard touchdown at the end of the game, the dude still has 32 fantasy points and is still the RB1 on the week. I mean, just a ridiculous week.
It's insane.
Yes.
It's insane. Josh Jacobs has just been on another level this year.
Yeah.
Shout out to Josh McDaniel. I mean, that dude's playing for a contract right now.
Yes. That might be a real big part of it.
I like what Ty said. Josh Jacobs to Atlanta next year. Let's see what Arthur Smith can do with him next year.
This might be every single game, 33 attempts.
Right. I mean, they got to improve their offensive line too.
Yeah.
And Vegas offensive line is better than
yardage might not be the same, but
right,
33 attempts might be the same.
And Atlanta will be willing to pay him that kind of money because they oh goodness. Why Arthur Smith? Wow, I could not come up with Arthur Smith's name for about 30 my Arthur Smith. He will be drooling over Josh Jacobs in free agency this offseason. Another free agent this offseason. 2 weeks after I trade him away in our dynasty league. I mean, I was okay with the trade, honestly. I came out, I think, good in that deal. But Miles Sanders, running back 2 on the week, 21 for 143. 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 17 yards, 31 fantasy points. I said this I was live for Fantasy Pros yesterday on TikTok. And I said this to almost every viewer on there. We're starting to get to that point where Miles Sanders is becoming a touchdown dependent running back. I mean, he proved me wrong yesterday, right? Going for nearly 7 yards a tote. But I mean, those 2 touchdowns certainly help. But this is like this is peak Miles Sanders, right?
Yes.
Insane efficiency, multiple touchdowns. just enough work in the receiving game to add icing on the cake, right?
Yes.
This is the peak for Miles Sanders. He pulled through in a big way against the Packers last night, who continue to get torched in the run game.
Yeah, I think if you're watching this from Miles Sanders and you're a Derrick Henry manager, you're really upset about how last week went because this is the game you were expecting for Derrick Henry.
Right.
But this is the Packers' true colors on defense. They can't stop the run. They give up crazy yards per carry, and so like Miles Sanders exploited that. And like you said, if they give him the opportunities, and especially in the red zone, but even Kenny Gainwell still had a rushing touchdown this game, and so. It's like he just needs multiple times in the red zone for him to get these touchdowns. And on this team, that doesn't always happen because, Jalen Hurts runs it in, Gainwell runs it in, or they can throw it deep to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith.
And Miles Sanders was due. Like you get to a point in fantasy football too, where it's just like you wonder. It's like, man, 2 good matchups for Miles Sanders, and he doesn't capitalize.
Yeah.
Like at some point, like I know people are like, man, imagine using it's due for analysis, but it's like when you get consistent, like Josh Jacobs, right? Like he was one too. Like I didn't think he was due for 48 fantasy points, but he's one where it's like, when he had his 2 off weeks before he went for 22 the week prior, you just thought like, Josh Jacobs, he's due again, right? With how he's been playing this year. And Miles Sanders, he's been playing great this year.
Yeah.
And after his 2 down weeks, single digit fantasy points, he's due. Good players get it done after bad games. Like that's just how it works. It's not great analysis, but at some point, like Chris Godwin and his touchdowns, right? You look at some point, you're like, yeah, that man's due. He has to score a touchdown in 4 games. He's due for a touchdown soon. I digress. We move on to a man who I'm surprised he's in the running backs. We should really just put him in the wide receiver category.
Stupid stat line.
We should really just put him in the wide receiver category. I don't even know why he's here. Austin Eckler. Man only had 5 rushing attempts yesterday for 20 yards. But it doesn't matter because he had 15 targets, 11 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown, 25 fantasy points. I mean, like the efficiency wasn't even that great in terms of receptions.
It's like
5.8 yards a reception.
That's crazy.
40. That's just it's just silly what Austin Eckler can do. This is the reason why he's the number 1 overall running back on the year.
Yeah. He is right now on pace for 123 catches on 151 targets. He might be the leading receiver in the NFL off of receptions, and he probably won't hit 1,000 yards receiving.
Which is just insane. It's just insane. It goes to show how valuable pass catching truly is.
Yes.
In PPR. Well, I mean, we'll get to another player who I share the same sentiment with, but it goes to show PPR value for pass catching running backs is insane. You want running backs who can catch the football. That's why Josh Jacobs is so dang good. I mean, you could take away his receiving work and he'd still have a phenomenal day. Don't get me wrong, but like that was why we all thought Josh Jacobs was going to fall off a cliff this year because he wasn't going to get as many pass catching opportunities. And here he is still hauling in, 5, 6, 7 targets a game.
It's ridiculous.
Let's fly through the rest of the top 10 here. James Conner, 25 rushing attempts, 120 yards. Didn't find the end zone on the ground, but did catch one yesterday, 3 receptions for 20 yards.
Yeah.
21 fantasy points on the day. I'm just at the point where I'm just assuming James Conner falls into the end zone every single week. I don't care who the matchup is.
You have to. And I mean, it helps that the Chargers are an awful rush defense, but anytime they're close to the red zone, he gets the ball multiple times. So
he's going to fall in at some point. Yes. I can safely assume that. They have a disgusting schedule coming up to close the season, but I still think James Conner is probably going to score in every game.
Yeah.
Jermichael Hasty came in for relief of Travis Etienne. Efficiency, disgusting. 12 for 28. 5 receptions, though, 67 yards and a touchdown, 20.5 fantasy points on the week. Can't bank on that every week because Travis Etienne will be back next week. Brian Robinson, 18 for 105. Caught a touchdown as well. Not many rushing touchdowns from the top tier running backs here.
No.
Quite a few receiving touchdowns on the week, though. 2 for 20 and a touchdown, 20.5 fantasy points as well for Brian Robinson. Nicholas Chubb, 26, 116 and a touchdown, 20.2 fantasy points is what you expect out of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, got bailed out because they decided to go for a touchdown instead of field goal to win the game. Otherwise, you're looking at a
Yes.
14-point week.
Which would put him outside of the top 10,
Yeah,
but still
still
solid
good, but
week job.
yeah.
Austin Eckler 2.0. 7 rushing attempts, 36 yards for Ramondre Stevenson, but it don't matter because he got 10 targets and he caught 9 of them for 76 yards. He didn't even score and he put up 20 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson, league winner. I would get up and victory lap him again, but I think the people already know that he's incredibly good this year and adds so much through the air.
I know, and Damian Harris is hurt again now, so he's going to have more opportunities. It's ridiculous. But yeah, he's got to be oh my gosh, I know I can't speak. Running back 1 moving forward.
Oh, he is. We'll be coming out with our rest of season top 10 rankings at our positions over on our TikTok, and I do believe Ramondre Stevenson cracks the top 10 there. Just for context, to close out the season, Buffalo next week, then he gets Arizona, Las Vegas, Cincinnati, Miami. Not the greatest matchups with Cincinnati and Miami. I'm looking at Arizona and Vegas. Vegas in the first round of the playoffs. Ramondre will send you to the second round by himself.
It'd be perfect for my first round bye.
No kidding. No kidding. But again, rest of the season, Ramondre, like, not half bad of a schedule. And if he's going to do this through the air, I mean, it doesn't matter. You start him every single week.
Yes, you do.
Wrap out the top 10, Rachaad White. I love that man, Rachaad White. He's so good. I don't think enough people knew about Rachaad White coming out of the draft. You got a handful of experts who were like, Rachaad White. I think too many people were on him in redraft.
Yes.
Because people were thinking he could have a role right away. And his role wasn't going to come right away with Leonard Fournette. No. But in Dynasty, I was all over him. All over him in Dynasty. 14 attempts, 64 yards, 9 receptions on 9 targets for 45 yards, good for 19.9 fantasy points. He did not find the end zone, but it doesn't matter. When Tom Brady checks down to you nonstop, that's going to just inflate your stats a ton, like we've seen with Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
Samaje Perine wraps out the top 10, 17 for 58. Touchdown as well. I didn't realize Samaje had 7 targets yesterday. I only caught 4 of them for 35, but en route to 19.3 fantasy points and a top 10 finish.
Yep.
Who do the Bengals get next week?
The Bengals have, I don't remember. Gosh, I just saw it too, actually. NFL schedule.
I can pull it up here quick too.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel like
you're good. I'm pulling it up here.
Chiefs. I knew it was a big game.
Oh, the Chiefs, yes. So Samaje Perine, if Joe Mixon is out, if he doesn't make it out of concussion protocol, yeah, Samaje Perine might crack my top 15. He will crack my top 15 next week.
Yes.
Let's move on to wide receiver booms of the week. I love to see this man's name at the top. Absolute. I loved seeing all the remixes with Randy Moss. 3 for 103 and 3 touchdowns for Randy Moss. 9 of 11, 139 yards and a touchdown for Justin Jefferson. 29.3 fantasy points. The man is insanely good at football.
Yeah, New England's been, all year and historically under Bill Belichick, really good at taking away your number 1 wide receiver. And so some people had skepticism about Justin Jefferson, and you didn't really need it because he's better than that. So there you go.
I mean, it was concerning after what Dallas absolutely did. And you thought Bill would just bring the pressure nonstop, but
he should have.
Kevin O'Connell. I mean, Kevin O'Connell can make adjustments, though, right?
Yes.
I don't know if he's the best at in-game adjustments, but on a week-to-week basis, when he can know what's actually coming, when he can predict what's coming, this team is unstoppable.
Yeah.
This Minnesota Vikings team is just so incredibly talented on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, they have a little bit to pick up on, but that's a conversation for another time. Chris Godwin, big day, 12 receptions on 13 targets, 110 yards and a touchdown, 29 fantasy points. Again, it's just guys like Chris Godwin where they're insanely talented. When they're not putting up the production that they're accustomed to, and they don't show signs of slowing down, everything was there for Chris Godwin. It was a matter of just finding the end zone, getting those yards per attempt, actually seeing 13 targets and making something out of the 8 receptions he had. I mean, we're talking nearly 10 yards of reception here, 110 yards and a touchdown, which he was due for again. great players do great things. Chris Godwin did a great thing this week. That's all the analysis you need.
Yeah, it's interesting too moving forward, because it's been feeling like we'll talk about his counterpart Mike Evans, but it feels like Godwin's been connecting really well with Brady, and Evans and Brady are just not on the same page. Evans had a couple games in a row with a lot of targets and just no production because Brady's just been missing them. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, moving the rest of the season.
When you even look at some of the plays Mike Evans was involved in yesterday,
Yep.
there's too many short passes to Mike Evans that he can't do anything with. Mike Evans
Yeah.
is not your yak guy. It was interesting to see that, but I digress. Amon-Ra St. Brown, speaking of great players doing great things, 9 receptions, 10 targets, 122 and a touchdown, added a rushing attempt for 7 yards, 27.9 fantasy points on Thanksgiving. He's really good, and he's going to continue to be really good. Well, like you look at their schedule down the stretch, dude's going to win you your league again this year. He's going to be a league winner 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Zay Jones, have yourself a day. 14 targets, 11 receptions, 145 yards. Did not catch a touchdown. Had 27.5 fantasy points, though. How did the math add up on that? Should that be 25.5 fantasy? Do you have a? Oh, yeah, 2-point conversion. Did he not?
Yep, he did.
I'm like, why is it not showing up in my
There we
stat
go.
line? Yes, he had a 2-point conversion as well. Zay Jones, massive day against the Ravens yesterday. I assume we'll talk about Christian Kirk later.
Yeah. This was the day you were hoping Christian Kirk was going to have, but Christian Kirk was on the other end of it. And so, yeah, we will talk about him later in the bust.
Garrett Wilson was begging for a new quarterback. He got a new quarterback, and that man popped off. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I said that again. I said this on live yesterday. Garrett Wilson, if he's begging for a new quarterback and he gets a new quarterback, like this was like quintessential squeaky wheel gets the grease here of like, if he says the team needs to improve in the offensive game and the offensive passing attack, they're going to feed the guy who was asking to improve the offensive passing attack. And Garrett Wilson improves your offensive passing attack.
Yes,
like
he does.
Let's put 2 and 2 together. This should have been clear as day that we saw Garrett Wilson having this kind of a day.
Yeah, and if we remember last year, Elijah Moore was a wide receiver 3 with Mike White in. Well, Garrett Wilson is in the Elijah Moore role, and he's better than Elijah Moore. So, it could be a pretty good little stretch that Garrett Wilson has moving forward to the end of the season.
100% agree. T. Higgins with no Jamar Chase capitalizes once again. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 114 yards and a score, 24.4 fantasy points. I think we can still get these big days out of T. Higgins, but the odds are going to be less likely now that Jamar Chase will be back next week. But T. Higgins is still a top tier option every week, and you start him.
Yes, he has to be.
Isaiah McKenzie, welcome back. I mean, I should say welcome back, but like, thanks for being good again. Thanks for being good again. 6 receptions on 10 targets, 96 yards and a touchdown, 2 rushing attempts for 7 yards, 22.3 fantasy points. I don't understand the Bills' usage of slot wide receivers because they're like Isaiah McKenzie can have these weeks, but then there are weeks like last week where he disappears entirely. So I don't entirely understand. We seem to have more consistency out of that role in previous years. We're just not getting that this year.
Yeah.
But it's good to see him here. And it's always good to see Stephon Diggs in the top 10 where he belongs as the wide receiver 1 on the season. 15 targets. Dude, you must suck when Austin Eckler gets as many targets as you.
I know. Could you believe it? Only tied for the most targets on the week. God.
I couldn't believe it. Dude must be awful. 8 receptions on those 15 targets, 77 yards and a score.
It was a weird game, though.
It was a very weird game. That was a late score too. I don't want to say Diggs would be disappointing with 14 fantasy points, but also at the same time, Stephon Diggs came through at the end there for your fantasy team by scoring.
He had like 6 points at the end of the third quarter. I think it was something ridiculously low, and then all of a sudden the last couple drives. I mean, but that's what happens with Stephon Diggs. Like if they need him, if Josh Allen needs to get a first down, he's going to throw it to Stephon Diggs. If he needs a touchdown, he's going to throw it to Stephon Diggs. So that's kind of nice to have him in that way.
Great players do great things, as I say for about the 4th time on this episode. Adam Thielen, 10 targets, 9 receptions, 61 and a score.
Where does this come from?
Yeah, thanks for making yourself known again, Adam Thielen. And
Yeah,
wish we could have had this the past few weeks.
I do.
This is what we should have been having all year. But I mean, this was just a back and forth game between these two defenses.
Yeah,
Neither could stop the passing attack, and Adam Thielen cashed it.
yeah. It's his revenge game against Bill Belichick. So
Yes, I love that clip resurfaced so
I
much.
did too. That was funny.
Christian Watson wrap out the top 10. Third straight game of 21 plus fantasy points, 4 receptions on 6 targets, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I have to ask this question. I have to. How reliable is Christian Watson going forward? I don't know how to gauge his success. I feel like we said this with Jamar Chase, right? Where it's like it's unsustainable. 20 yards of reception, deep scores every game. It's not dependable. I don't know. Christian Watson has done it for 3 straight games now. Like,
I
is
know.
it all that undependable? Like, I
He
don't want
really
to jump to
feels
that conclusion, but I only see 6 targets. And that makes me kind of nervous.
Yeah, he
I'm not
really
gonna
feels
lie.
like that guy that the rest of the year we're gonna be like, can't trust Christian Watson this week. Can't trust Christian Watson this week. You know, it's unsustainable. And then big week after big week, and then the second everybody's like, all right, Christian Watson's legit. It's gonna be like 3 targets, 1 catch, 20 yards, and it's just you don't know how to feel, and it's tough too because you don't know where the quarterback position is going to be at, right? We talked about that at the beginning of the show. Rodgers is hurt. How much longer is Rodgers going to play if they're out of the playoffs? How good is Jordan Love actually going to look if teams have a week to game plan for him? So, I mean, I feel like right now he's got to be a flex play. Like you said, he's had 3 big weeks like this. It might feel unsustainable, but I mean, if you're talking like him or man, let's see who's someone down there. Him or Terry McLaurin, what are you doing next week? McLaurin's had 2 bad games. Christian Kirk's had 3 great games. Where are you sitting with that?
I would still play Terry. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still playing the proven. I can't like I say proven commodity. It sounds insane as Christian Watson has had 3 top 10 finishes at the position for 3 straight weeks now.
Let me find you a better name.
I mean, I would
Gabe
still
Davis.
I would play Christian Watson then. I Gabe Davis irks me in every way possible.
Juju.
I think I would play Christian Watson.
Cortland Sutton, I assume you're Christian Watson.
I would play Christian Watson.
DJ Moore. That's who I was thinking of.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, DJ Moore doesn't play next week, but the week after.
Well, Christian Watson's on bye then, so I'll play
yes. All right, if they're both playing.
Yes, I would play both if I could. That's my answer to that question. If I could flex one and play one as my wide receiver too, I would.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the conversations that people are gonna have. I think if he's a guy like if you got like a Stephon Diggs and then another good solid wide receiver too, I'm probably going to lean towards starting Christian Watson because then why not go for the boom in your flex if you understand that your other 2 wide receivers are going to get you, solid points up front.
Right.
So
exactly. Christian Watson, highest percentage of snaps this week, 92%.
Yeah.
That is trending real well for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting Amon-Ra vibes from him. I'm not going to lie, because it seems like it's to the point where he's not a hot potato, right? Everyone saw 32. We're going to scoop him up. 21 the next week. If he wasn't picked up yet, everybody scooped him up. He did it again. Now everybody's like, wait, are the wheels going to fall off here? They have to at some point, right? Get Chicago, week 13, bye in week 14. Week 15 gets the Rams. Week 16 gets the Dolphins. Week 17 gets the Vikings. Week 18 gets Detroit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's scary Amon-Ra vibes of we're questioning it, and he has the schedule to put up. He literally could put up 20 plus fantasy points the next 5 games. Yeah. I firmly believe he could do that.
Yeah, and the craziest thing too, Allen Lazard has had 98% snaps, 92% snaps, and 100% snaps last 3 games. So it's not like Allen Lazard, is like battling something or been off the field. Allen Lazard's still out there, and Christian Watson's putting up these kind of numbers. So it's just kind of like, man. But you're right. I mean, he has that potential to be that Amon-Ra this year because he's so explosive, because he can put up a 70-yard touch. He could be 2 of 4 for 20 yards and all of a sudden 70-yard touchdown, and you're looking at a 19-point week. So it's just like, man, but he's going to be scary. He's a scary start moving forward.
I found my new video of the week on Friday. Initially, it was going to be Ramondre Stevenson. My new Friday video is going to be Christian Watson. It's this year's Amon Ra.
Ooh, all right. Staking
There
his
you go.
flag.
If you're
Planting the flag.
I'm planting my flag. If you listen to the podcast and you're following us on the socials, there you go. You just got a sneak preview of the video coming on Friday. It's too bad about it's barely 1% of our audience is is converted from TikTok right now. So you all get a special. And let's move on to quarterback booms. We only got 25 minutes here till the end of the episode.
right.
And we got quite a bit to cover. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, 1 and 2 on the week. I don't even have to read you their stat lines because that's where they belong as the as the quarterback 1 and 2 on the week. 30.9 for Josh Allen, 29.8 for Jalen Hurts. This is where they should be. Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, 3 and 4. This is where they should be. And Justin Herbert against Arizona, like again, if you didn't see this game coming, you should have seen the game coming. 35 of 47, 274 and 3 for Herbert, 28.8 fantasy points. Kyler, 18 of 29 for 191, 2 touchdowns, 7 rushing attempts, 56 yards. Fresh off that hamstring injury, I was surprised by that. Also scored on the ground. I didn't expect Kyler to be mobile yesterday, but when Kyler doesn't have to have 250, 275-yard games to be top 5 because he can get it done with his legs, which he really should be doing more. Did you see what he said after yesterday's game, though?
I did not see what he said.
I can't believe I can't recall the exact quote. Essentially, he said schematically our offense is screwed up. Basically, just called out Cliff Kingsbury.
It's Cliff's fault.
I believe there was some foul language used in there, if I recall the quote correctly, but I don't. But essentially, Kyler just put the offense on blast and saying, in terms of the offense, schematically, we're pretty screwed up right now.
They're so screwed up right now in Arizona. Like it's got to be Kyler or Cliff at the end of the year, and I got a feeling it's Cliff that's going to go. But they just got paid.
I'm going to take the guy who's actually getting it done on the football field for you versus the brains of brains of all of it. When your quarterback comes out and says your offense is schematically screwed up, that's saying something because you don't hear Russell Wilson coming out and saying that about his offense this year. You don't hear Aaron Rodgers coming out and saying that about this Green Bay Packers rushing attack.
No.
We can make fun of Kyler for sitting behind the headset all we want, but at the end of the day, Cliff Kingsbury, his time is coming to an end very, very rapidly here.
You got to think.
Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 5 on the week, 29 and 37, 321 and 3. What is he still a top 10 quarterback on the year? Where is he at specifically?
Like on the season right now, we're pulling it up. He is quarterback 11. However, in points in game, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he's 11th in points per game and 11th on the season. But he's only 0.8 points behind Justin Herbert, who after this performance just snuck into the top 10. But he's performing pretty well. He's playing well.
Nobody is talking about it either.
No.
Like Trevor Lawrence is becoming one of the most reliable streaming options every single week. And we said it at the start of the year that like Trevor Lawrence has like equal upside to Tua. I mean, Tua's been smashing it. Don't get me wrong. Like Tua's looking like the better NFL quarterback right now. But like we said, Trevor Lawrence had this upside for a top 12 breakout year, and he's there right now. He's sitting at quarterback 11.
Yeah, I actually don't think I think it might be the best storm for Trevor Lawrence that he could have had. Like I understand Urban Meyer's a mess, but you go down there and everybody just considers year 1 as a wash. They're like, you got Urban Meyer. And then he comes back in and he gets a coach in Doug Peterson. He plays in Jacksonville, so he has no expectations of winning. Nobody watches your games, right? And now he's taking this year where he's taking a step forward. Nobody notices. Next year, if they go out and get him another wide receiver or something like
Calvin
that.
Calvin Ridley will be back next year.
Exactly. You have Calvin Ridley now. They could be in a really, really good spot for Trevor Lawrence next year. And people are going to be like, not even talking about as a top 10 quarterback. And all of a sudden he could light it up. So like if you're in a dynasty league, he's definitely a guy that you should be going after right now. Because last year he was seen as like a top 5 dynasty quarterback. And now he's barely in a top 12 conversation. So you should be all over Trevor Lawrence if you can.
Trey Lance or Trevor Lawrence dynasty?
Man, see that Trey Lance is just the the unknown. If I have Trey Lance, I'm not going to trade him away.
Oh,
But
you're right. Yeah, I wouldn't either. But
man, yeah, I think if I'm moving forward, I would feel a lot more confident with Trevor Lawrence, just because if we're looking dynasty, I know he's going to be on the field at all times.
yeah,
But Trey Lance has that ceiling that he has the Jalen Hurts, the Kyler Murray, the Lamar Jackson ceiling.
Mike White, 22 of 28, 315, balled out against Chicago, 3 touchdowns, 24.8 fantasy points.
In the rain too.
In the rain, yeah, he looked sharp yesterday. Mac Jones, 28 to 39, 382 and 2 against the Vikings, 23.3 fantasy points.
382.
You can in a loss. You can expect that out of most quarterbacks from here on out. 300 plus against the Vikings, just book it.
Yep.
Book it. Lamar Jackson, quarterback 8 on the week. Wasn't as big of a week that I was expecting. 16 at 32, 50% completion percentage. 14 rushing attempts though for 89 yards, saved his day, 23.1 fantasy points, added a touchdown through the air. I want to see more out of Lamar. Like, I don't want to say it was a disappointing week. I just wanted to see more. I wasn't blown away by his performance yesterday.
No, not at all.
Fantasy day.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this Lamar a ton, and everybody talks about it. Like, he's got the rushing to kind of save him on a day like this, but they dropped 3 touchdowns in the end zone, the Ravens did. And none of those 3 led to Lamar touchdowns. So that's something also keeping. But 16 to 32 is not a great look, especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. He has been on the injury report every single week, so hopefully, hopefully there is. I don't want to say hopefully there's something nagging, but you're kind of like, hopefully there is something a little nagging, and he's actually going to be healthy this next week moving forward. So, just something to monitor. But yeah, a little slightly disappointing for how that game went.
Kirk O'Chains, quarterback 9 on the week, 30 of 37, 299, 3 tutties. 22.9 fantasy points. Get used to Kirk Cousins being in the top 10 if you haven't already. I mean, he's floating right around that 13 to 8 range, 8 to 13 range pretty much every single week. And you're going to find Kirk Cousins there almost every single week. Except when he plays the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 3 divisional games coming up, and all 3 teams have struggled. So against the Bears, Lions, and Packers. So those are definitely matchups to look forward to.
Derek Carr wraps out the top 10 despite an interception to open the game on the first play and another one later that wasn't pretty. 25 at 36, 295 and 3. 22.8 fantasy points on the day. I was just that was one of those I think I said it with Ty. It's just one of those games that was going to end up being like the Lions and Seahawks earlier this year. It was just going to be unnecessarily high scoring. 73 total points, if I recall. 72 total points.
Yeah, insane. Something ridiculous like that.
Insane. Derek Carr wraps out the top 10 quarterbacks. Tight end booms of the week. Dalton Schultz. 4 receptions, 4 targets, 31 yards, 2 scores, 19.1 fantasy points. It's top 5 option rest of the season as long as Dak Prescott is at quarterback. I assume we can move on.
Yeah, he has to be. I mean, he's going to be borderline top 3. So,
Josh Oliver, 4 receptions, 6 targets. Hello, Mark Andrews. Are you home? 76 yards and a touchdown, 17.6 fantasy points. I have no interest in Josh Oliver.
No, you're just frustrated if you're a Mark Andrews manager.
I'm peeved if I'm a Mark Andrews manager. Isaiah Likely's one thing. He's the young, promising rookie. Josh Oliver. Who?
Yeah.
Travis Kelce. 8 targets, 4 receptions, 57 and a score. He sucked this week. He wasn't the overall tight end 1. He sucked.
Isn't that crazy? You look at this matchup and you're like, hey, well, that's just boring. But
you look average. Why are you average, Travis Kelce? You're not average. You're extraordinary.
This is 7 points lower than his season average right now. Like, this dude is ridiculous.
I know the fact that we're like tight end 3 and we're like, 15.7. That's kind of upsetting.
He's currently the wide receiver 3 on the season,
which is insane.
Not fair.
TJ Hawkinson. He's a top 5 option rest of season. I have him as a top 3 option rest of season.
Yeah.
5 receptions, 6 targets, 43 yards and a score, 15.3 fantasy points. He didn't get the 9+ targets, but he found the end zone. I read it. I believe it was on Was it 4 for 4 last week? And I was looking at player props over there. They had TJ Hawkinson over half a touchdown. They said he's due. I said, and I admittedly was the person in that case. I'm like, wow, what analysis. I'd rather bet on his receptions. Both hit, but again, it's just one of those where Hawk was due after all those targets, 19 targets without a score. Hawk was due for the end zone.
Yeah, it's Travis Kelce, then Mark Andrews, then a huge gap, then Mark Andrews, and then it's Hawkinson and Schultz in that next tier. I think Kittle's kind of, they just got so many mouths to feed over there that you could probably loop him into that. But yeah, Hawkinson and Schultz is about as safe as you can get at tight end position.
Hunter Henry, 3 receptions on 5 targets, 63 yards and a score. He broke loose for that score was 22 yards, 15.3 fantasy points.
Could have had another.
Yeah, could have had another too. Jordan Akins, 5 of 5 for 61 and a score. This is your classic here. Here's another big game from Jordan Akins, and you're like, oh, the Houston Texans tight end we've all been waiting for. And then Jordan Akins is going to disappear and give you a goose egg next week.
Yep. And then OJ Howard in 3 weeks will have a good week, and then Jordan Akins in another 3 weeks.
David Njoku, 5 of 7 for 29 and a score, 13.9 fantasy points. Yeah, 29. I didn't realize his receiving yard total was that bad yesterday.
I know.
Foster Moreau, 3 of 7 for 33 and a score. Hayden Hurst, 6 of 9. Tyler start of the week for 57 yards, 11.7 fantasy points. John Bates, Washington tight end, 3 of 4, 24 yards and a score. If you're a tight end, you can find the end zone. You're going to be in the top 10 because literally every tight end in the top 10 this week outside of Hayden Hurst found the end zone.
Yeah, tight ends is just such a gross position. It really is.
If you don't have any of the top 5 guys, I would close my eyes and just throw darts.
Exactly. That's all you could do.
Let's move on to bus now. We got 10 minutes and we got to get to some rapid fire waiver wire as well. Right. Bus of the week. Starting at running back, Kareem Hunt. He's unstartable. Is he cuttable? Is he droppable?
The only thing is Deshaun Watson coming back. I'd keep him one more week and just see what it looks like with Watson. If it looks the same, then yeah, he's cuttable at that point. But if for some reason he gets a spike, then you got to keep him. But I'd keep him one more week. But then yeah, you're not starting him though.
Yeah, if you haven't dropped him already, you have to hold on to him for at least one game with Deshaun Watson. If you've dropped him already, I don't blame you. Alvin Kamara. I said this. He's going to be worth investing in the playoffs. Going up to the playoffs, so he's got brutal stretch, which is why I was thinking if your trade deadline goes through week 13, if you can still make trades through next week, go get Alvin Kamara, please. He will pay off in the playoffs for you.
Yes.
He will pay off in the last in week 14, 15, 16, 17. He will pay off for you. Yeah. Up to that point, it's not fun. It's not fun because he had San Francisco yesterday, 7 attempts for 13 yards. Added 6 receptions for 37 yards, which is phenomenal. He did fumble, had 2 fumbles, one of them was on the goal line, so he could have found the end zone too.
Yeah.
Just not a good day for Alvin Kamara. He'll be fine going forward, but go out and get him on while you can get him at a discount still.
Yes. Well, exactly. If he doesn't fumble on the goal line there, it's an 8-point swing. He's got 15 points on the week. And you're like, oh, that feels pretty good.
Yes, right. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of that with that context. Dameon Pierce, 4.6, the running back 49 on the week. 5 attempts for 8 yards. What is wrong with Dameon Pierce?
It is getting scary in Houston right now with Dameon Pierce.
Does he crack our top 20 running backs rest of season?
I think we have him in there, but at the same time, he could very easily, I have no confidence starting him anymore.
Teams know. Oh, you're just going to feed Dameon Pierce 38 times a game, and we'll jump on your throat from there. I mean, Miami was up 28-0 in the first half.
Yeah.
And they had no need to feed Dameon Pierce. They had to play catch-up. There's no need to play Dameon Pierce, but, this is back-to-back weeks of averaging just 1 yard a rush.
Less than a yard or barely a yard a rush.
Barely a yard a rush.
It's just crazy. And Kyle Allen did start this game instead of Davis Mills. So but I don't know how much.
I don't care. It was bad with Davis Mills too. Yeah. Doesn't change much for me.
But yeah, I am scared starting Dameon Pierce moving forward.
Christian McCaffrey, 8.9 fantasy points, running back 35 on the week, 11 attempts, 32 yards. Somehow only 4 receptions. I should say only 4 receptions. 4 receptions for only 17 yards. no Elijah Mitchell. Like McCaffrey will be back. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
You can't be
Yeah.
concerned over this game.
Yeah, they showed the.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No,
That
go ahead.
I was just gonna say on the television or not on the broadcast, they showed they made it a pie and just showed how much of the just share of the ball each player's getting. And McCaffrey's already getting way more than everybody else.
Yeah.
So you can have that confidence moving forward with McCaffrey. Kyle Shanahan loves to use him. He's already shown it. He just puts them in different looks constantly. So efficiency will be there. And then, like you said, no Elijah Mitchell. You got to be really confident moving forward.
Yeah, I doubt anybody's going to want to sell McCaffrey, but if
No.
you can get him at a discount, please go do it. Tony Pollard, running back 37 on the week, despite Zeke having a good week, 8.1 fantasy points, running back 37, and Dalvin Cook. Yeah, he wasn't great against New England, but when the passing attack is clicking,
Yeah.
Dalvin isn't needed. 9.6, running back 30 on the week.
Yeah.
Wide receiver bust of the week. Alan Lazard outshined by Christian Watson for the third straight week, 4.4 fantasy points, a wide receiver, 76 on the week. I mean, I want Christian Kirk over Alan Lazard rest of the season. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Christian Watson, you mean?
Yeah, what did I say?
Christian Kirk.
I'm at Christian Watson. Yes.
I was assuming you wanted Christian Kirk too, but I figured
2-minute minor.
The statement was more towards Watson.
We got to start that. We got to get our own helmets. There's got to be 2-minute minors and 5-minute majors on the pod now. Running joke. I think that'd be a hilarious bit, though.
It would be good.
Mike Evans. Yeah, we said we'd talk about him later. 5.1 wide receiver, 72 on the week, 2-9. 9 targets. He only had 2 receptions for 31 yards. Yeah, him and Brady are not in sync right now.
No, not at all.
If your trade deadline hasn't passed, would you be a buyer?
Mike Evans?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's had a couple low scoring weeks, but I mean, he's still getting 7, 8, 9 targets a game. You got to think they click at some point. Touchdowns come if they click. So yeah, I'd be buying on Mike Evans.
Do you trade DJ Moore?
Yes.
Terry McLaurin?
Yes.
Michael Pittman?
Yes.
Those are the only 3 names I can come up with off the top of my head.
No, that's fine with me. And those are three easier ones for me.
Deebo Samuel, 7.3 fantasy points, a wide receiver, 63 on the week. 3 of 7, 4.3, 43 yards. Goodness, there was an extra period thrown in there. 3 of 7 for 43 yards, no yards, despite 2 rushing attempts. I told people yesterday, there was a lot of Deebo questions yesterday. I said, you're going to feel real dumb the one week you sit Deebo and he goes off for 25.
Yep.
I don't think you can sit him, but man, it's not pretty for Deebo Samuel.
No, it's not. You know how good he is. Garoppolo missed him on a couple throws yesterday. So, I mean, that's tough, but man, he's another nerve-wracking one where you feel like you constantly have to start him, but there's just so many mouths to feed. It's crazy.
DJ Moore, you're trading him for Deebo Samuel?
I would trade DJ Moore for Deebo Samuel.
Terry McLaurin.
I would also trade Terry McLaurin.
Michael Pittman.
Pittman's where I kind of am
drawn the line.
That would be a tough one for me. Like, I'd really want to trade Pittman for Deebo, but I'd also feel very nervous about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's going to be our barometer now. It's DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Michael Pittman barometer. Would you trade these players? Christian Kirk. Would you trade DJ Moore for him?
I would trade DJ Moore for Christian Kirk, yes.
Terry McLaurin.
I would trade Terry McLaurin for Christian Kirk. I would also trade Pittman. I would trade Pittman for Kirk at this point. Kirk's been playing really well. I mean, Zay Jones just had a great week. And Trevor Lawrence has been playing really well too. So yeah, I'm gonna stay in on Christian Kirk. He's a wide receiver 10 on the season.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay bought in on Christian Kirk as well. Honorable mentions: Juju, fresh off a concussion. I'm not too concerned. Yep. Wide receiver 66 on the week. Devonta Smith, wide receiver 55 with only 9 fantasy points. Like, I feel like this was too obvious at the beginning of the year when he threw up his 30-point games, and people are like, oh, dude, he's just that good. This offense is just that good. I'm like, yeah, you really want to bet on Devonta Smith scoring more than 15 fantasy points consistently with A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert when he was healthy, all in the same offense. And they're like, well, it opens up big plays for everybody.
Yeah.
it also gives him less pie to have those big plays. Like you have to recognize probability in there too.
Yep.
So we're starting to see that slide from Devonta Smith. CD Lamb, only 9.5 fantasy points to wide receiver 49 on the week. Gabe Davis, wide receiver 61, 7.8 fantasy points. Gabe Davis has to be the most infuriating fantasy player to manage this year.
Yep.
Quarterback bus. Certified bum Wilson.
He's so bad.
Russell Bum Wilson. 8.5 fantasy points. The quarterback 32 on the week.
Just atrocious.
He couldn't have. I believe 33 quarterbacks were started. So there was one quarterback who was worse than him last week.
Yes.
19 and 35, 142 and a tutty. There it is. He had the same amount of fantasy points as Jordan Love last week. So that way, Jordan Love's 33, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Oh, 1 second. CD Lamb was not a bust. I was looking at that. It was Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin should have been CD Lamb. CD Lamb had 17 points.
I was going to say that seemed low for CD Lamb.
That is our bad. I did not change the name. I've done that 2 weeks in a row now where I added in the points and did not change the name. Terry McLaurin was the one who was a bum.
Yes, Terry McLaurin only had 9.5. That sounds more familiar. I read that and I'm like, we got to keep flying. I'm not going to fact check that, but
yep. That's why I was
I thought CD had a good week this week.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers, 11.5 fantasy points. He did leave in the third quarter, though. He was 11 to 16 for 140, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Tua, his quarterback 18 on the week with only 16 fantasy points. It wasn't bad, but I mean, they yank him out early because they were up by 30 fantasy points, up by 30 total points, excuse me. Dak Prescott, 16.8. Again, not a bad week, but the quarterback 17 on the week.
Yep.
Tight end bus. Goose egg, Jawan Johnson. After scoring in multiple weeks.
Nothing.
After being a top 5 tight end. Nope, nothing. Jawan Johnson ain't worth a squat anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy. He just went from being almost relevant to now nothing.
Evan Ingram has fallen off. 1 reception, 4 yards, tight end 47 on the week. Yeah, he was heavy consideration for a streamer at one point. Now I don't want to touch him with the 10-foot pole.
Nope.
Just where he used to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
George Kittle, tight end 23, 5.6 fantasy points. I really want to be a believer rest of season.
It's just so hard.
I seriously I would rather have Dalton Schultz and TJ Hawkinson over George Kittle rest of season.
Yes, sir. We've said it for as long as I can remember. You cannot trust Kyle Shanahan when it comes to fantasy players because you never know what's going to happen week to week.
Dawson Knox, 3.7 fantasy points, a tight end 30 on the week, back where he belongs as well. I've never been a believer in Knox and happy to still say I hold very true and I'm still correct on that. Booms and busts from week 12. Let's wrap the episode out with some rapid fire waiver wire, Cameron. We have waivers running tonight. If you're listening to the podcast, we want to make sure you're prioritizing the right players at this crucial point in the season. Now is when waivers matter most. These can be league winners. These can be championship winners here that you're picking up off of waivers.
Yeah.
So let's rapid fire list the top waiver ads of the week here. I don't know if we have any of those major league winners here in these ads, but these are guys that you, if you got anybody you can cut right now, I am taking a shot on almost all of these guys.
Yes, for sure.
I'll let you kick it off.
First guy is Zonovan Knight. Came out of nowhere with James Robinson being a healthy scratch. Just crazy. He had 14 carries, 69 yards, had another 3 carries for 3 targets for, I think, 34 yards after Michael Carter got hurt. We said earlier, Carter's day-to-day. They think he might play this next week. But even with that, if they're having James Robinson be a healthy scratch, this is a guy you got to pick up because they don't treat Carter like an every down back. So if for some reason Carter can't go or if for some reason they start giving him a bigger role, he's definitely a guy you want to add.
Zay Jones, we talked about him earlier. wide receiver 4 on the week. He's been on this list multiple. I shouldn't say on this list. We just started this segment
Yes.
only a few weeks ago, but earlier this year, he has made our weekly waiver wire claims almost for about 3 weeks straight. We said you got to get Zay Jones because he's a guy who could give you 10 almost every week.
Yes.
He could close his eyes and give you 10 most weeks. And he's going to be a consistent piece. But now after his big boom week, I think now is the time to make sure Zay Jones is on your roster for a safety valve. He's going to be one of the best safety valves every week. So Zay Jones, you got to go scoop him up.
Yep. Next guy is Van Jefferson. We talked about earlier. Allen Robinson's out for the season. That makes Jefferson the wide receiver 1. Obviously, Stafford's been injured. It's not going to be pretty, but he's seen 5 and 7 targets last 2 games, scored a touchdown. He could be a guy that's in flex consideration every single week moving forward, just because he is going to see volume by default.
Speaking of volume by default, Mac Hollins, the dude's just going to keep getting targets. He's going to be on the field a ton. Before Hunter Renfrow landed on the IR, Mac Hollins was out snapping him. Mac Hollins has been like sneaky good. Double digits for the past 6 weeks in terms of fantasy points. Devontae Adams is the one, but no Darren Waller now either. Like Mac Hollins is the clear number 2 in this offense. He's definitely worth adding, I think, this week. Again, he's going to be a good end of bench depth piece because he can give you 8 target weeks. And if he falls into the end zone, he can give you 16 in a hurry. So Mac Hollins, I think he's a sneaky one.
Yeah, definitely. Isaiah McKenzie is my last one. We talked about in the booms. He had a good week. Maybe they start going back to the slot receiver some more. He's not a start moving forward, but he's definitely a guy you want on the bench. Especially if there is an injury to a Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs, he's going to be a guy who will step up. So Isaiah McKenzie on a great offense is a guy we would add.
And lastly, Kyren Williams led the Rams in rushing attempts last week. He was 11 for 35. Efficiency wasn't great, but he added 3 receptions for 25 yards, which is where his value starts to kick in. Because if he falls into the end zone, he's got 15 on the week. And I think Kyren can give you more than 3 receptions most weeks. I think if this team really needs to start getting playmakers involved, I think Kyron's going to end up being one of those guys. So, Kyren Williams, he is definitely worth adding at the end of your bench because it's not impossible Cam Akers continues to get faded out of this offense. And I would rather take the PPR upside that Kyren Williams offers over Cam Akers pretty much every week from here on out.
100%.
That was rapid fire waiver wire to close out the episode. Cameron, anything you want to add before we sign off here?
Yeah, and just got to keep making sure you're watching that waiver wire. If someone drops someone crazy, you should be watching that every single day because it does matter at this time of the year.
It totally matters because all it takes is one bad performance from a guy who's been on fire recently. If somebody were to drop a James Robinson or Michael Carter in your league for God knows what reason, I would go scoop them up because their schedule down the stretch is juicy. But those are the things you do have to keep in mind at this point of the year. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, CamLaw317 for Cameron. Make sure to follow our main accounts at the Fellas as well. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subbed and have notifications turned on so you know when new episodes are out, just like podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Join our Chalkboard community full of league winners, unsolicited fantasy advice, plus our rankings over there down in the description for free of the audio podcast you are listening to. 2 Stooges out of the 3 of us being dudes tonight. We're the Fantasy Football Fellas. We will see you all midweek to preview Week 13. Deuces.